the more we get involved, the more the politicians, the judges, the people in the communities understand that these programs and these processes aren't free, and that we need their help, we need their support, we need their money, we need their bodies to assist. Dallas is a big community, and there's a whole lot of funds, but there are rural communities all over the state of Texas that I tell you, I promise you, if you set me, my good drug addict and drinking days, if you set me loose in a county in West Texas, in 10 minutes, I'm going to find drugs and alcohol. They're everywhere, and the problems are everywhere. And we've got to have the community support to the rural communities as well as the urban cities and counties that we face. Anything people in their communities can do to assist, both on a manpower basis and on an economic and fund basis, it's important. And the return is tremendous.
Welcome back to Justice and Recovery, the official podcast sponsored by the Texas Association of Specialty Courts, which is a statewide nonprofit that builds and strengthens Texas specialty courts through collaboration, advocacy, and education. During this podcast, we will focus on real people doing real work and making a real impact. I'm your host, Liz Wiggins. I volunteer on the TASC board and have been elected to serve as the communications director. Today, I am speaking with Hank Judin, a Dallas criminal defense attorney with over 40 years of experience practicing law. Hank has his own law practice and serves as the defense attorney for the Dallas DIVERT Specialty Court program, a program for first-time adult drug offenders. Hank shares his own story with substance abuse and his journey to sobriety, and about his subsequent path to serving the Dallas community. Don't forget, you can join our conversations by sending me questions to ask future guests or provide feedback on past episodes to justicerecoverypodcast@gmail.com. And as always, please help us by liking and subscribing to the show and sharing our show with people you know. Now let's get started. I appreciate you being on here with us today.
Thank you. I'm excited about it.
Usually I ask my guest speakers to kind of start off and give a really quick introduction about themselves, but you actually have a biography on your website that I'm going to read, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about that. Your website says that C.H. Hank Judin III is a criminal defense attorney located in Dallas, Texas. Your practice has always been focused solely on criminal law matters. You're licensed to practice in all states and federal courts in Texas, and you possess exceptional skills in handling state and federal criminal law matters. You are experienced with all phases of criminal trials in both the Texas state and federal courts. You're a seasoned trial lawyer who has handled hundreds of trials it says 23 years of practice, but we know that's not accurate. I'm going to come back to that. And you are a respected member of the legal community. Now that I do think is accurate. Mr. Judin received his undergraduate and JD degree from Baylor University. He has practiced law since 1980 when he worked in the Dallas District Attorney's Office, and you are a member of the National Association of Criminal Defense Attorneys, the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, the Dallas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, and the Dallas Bar Association. In addition, you are a former director of the Texas Young Lawyers Association, and you served as chairman of the Criminal Justice Committee of the Dallas Bar Association. You also held several leadership positions with the Dallas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, including president in 2002. You are currently the participant's attorney for the Dallas County Divert Court, one of the most successful alternative treatment courts in the state of Texas. You also received the highest peer review rating of AV by Martindale Hubbell, and on many occasions, you've been selected as a super lawyer by Texas Monthly. In your free time, Mr. Judin, that would be you, is active in his local community. He is a member of St. Michael's and All Angels Episcopal Church, and he performs extensive volunteer work with drug and alcohol rehabilitation community. Now, you have a whole lot more information provided about your pro bono activities, past positions and classes and seminars. But I want to dive into a little bit more about who you are, Hank, because you have lived a lifetime of experiences that I think are valuable to our listeners today. But let's start with this 23 years of practice that we know is incorrect, because somebody needs to update this website.
That
So
is so true.
how many years of experience do you have now in criminal law?
Well, if we are correct in that I was licensed to practice in 1980 and was with the Dallas County District Attorney's Office in 19 beginning in 1980, which was my first professional job as an attorney. Count back, and I think it ends up being closer to 44 years
Yep.
of practice than 25 or even 30. So I've been practicing since 1980 when I graduated. My first real job as an attorney was with the Dallas County District Attorney's Office at that time.
Yeah, lawyers and math, they make those jokes like they don't mix. I'm not gonna lie, for a moment I almost pulled out a calculator, right? Just to check that math there. But yeah, I would say 43 sounds about right, totaling all those years. That is a lot of years to be in criminal law and be a part of the criminal justice system, period. Just to be a part of that. And I bet you have a lot of stories to tell that we won't be able to dive into today, but we're going to dive into some of them for sure. The other thing I want to ask you about is it talks about federal courts. So I just want to, just ask you real quick a little follow-up about that. Do you practice criminal law in the federal court system
A
right now?
majority of my work is in the state courts in Dallas and the surrounding counties, but I am licensed to practice in all federal districts, and most of the time in my practice I'll have one or two or maybe three federal cases running anytime. Most of them are drug related cases. I
Mm.
don't do any white collar federal stuff, so 99% of my federal practice is directly related to uh, drug cases involved in the federal system.
That's good. So just one more avenue in which you gain perspective and experience in that field. So before we even go off this topic, we have to dive into all of this work and involvement with these associations and organizations. Because one thing that was not listed on there was the Texas Association of Specialty Courts. Can you share a little bit more about your connection to that organization?
Yes, basically, my connection with the Texas Association of Specialty Courts began in 2006 when I was asked to begin providing services to the Dallas County Divert Court by Judge John Crusoe at the time, who was the judge of that court. And For those who don't know, John Crusoe was probably one of the most influential and founding individuals in the state of Texas for specialty courts. Uh, so at that time, John asked me to be the participant's attorney for Divert Court, and it has been a gift that has happened to me. Basically, he came to me based upon the fact that he knew I was in recovery. My sobriety began in April of 1989 and have continued it since. And a large part of my recovery and staying clean and sober has been the work that I've been had the privilege of doing with both the Dallas specialty courts and even on the state level.
There's so many things I want to follow up on from that, but I know that you are a past president of the Texas Association of Specialty Courts as well. Do you know about total of how many years that you've served then with the Texas Association of Specialty Courts or served in some way?
I started, well, in 2006, joined up, and I believe I was elected to a directorship somewhere around 2010 or 11, and have either been a director or an officer uh, up until the presidency, and took a 1 year hiatus after my presidency expired, and then I got dragged back into it. I'm back on the board again at this time.
That's right. You're back on the board with us again. We just, I think that in some way we just keep roping you in, and you just keep coming back and serving the people in the great state of Texas, through this work. And I appreciate that. I could just say that right now. I appreciate how long and how hard you've been working for the people. I want to dive in a little bit more, if you're comfortable talking a little bit more about your sobriety, if you don't mind. Can you share a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, not at all. Back in April of 1989, I was married at the time to someone other than my current wife, and the young lady indicated to me that she thought that I was consuming too many drinks at times, and it was a eye-opening experience, and what happened to me was I could knew that I was doing I was acting out in an inappropriate manner in many ways, both my professional life, my spiritual life, my family life, and I'm one of these crazy guys that walked into an AA meeting and took a chair and said, "I'm an alcoholic," and God has blessed me with sobriety ever since. The big part of my sobriety and staying sober for me has been working with other alcoholics and drug addicts, which that's where all my association with the Dallas Divert Court, the Texas Association of Specialty Courts, and even on the national level has gone to assist me, kept me sober, and hopefully I've been able to help other people gain sobriety and clean and stay that way.
I have no doubt that your journey is an inspiration for the people that you work with. Maybe more so for some than others, but I have no doubt that it's making an impact. I think that, you know, knowing that you've done that in the amount of years and your success, is really great. There's not a lot of times that I think attorneys are working with people and are able to, have really connect with some of the things that people are struggling with, the people that they serve. And so I think that there's, like I said, I don't think that there's any doubt that your journey is making an impact on people's lives in a positive way. And I do want to kind of dive now into what is it you do exactly for the specialty courts in the Dallas area? There's one specific specialty court, right, that you work with. Can you share a little bit more
Yeah,
about
I'm
that?
the participant's attorney for the Dallas County Divert Court, which is the felony drug court in Dallas in Dallas. I act as their representative through the court system. You know, part of what the blessing of the specialty court system across Texas and the United States has been the uh, setup of best practices and the guides that we are given to make programs successful. And so basically what I try to do is as best as practice. And the great thing about the Dallas Divert Court, it being it just celebrated 25 years a couple of years ago. So it is one of the uh, uh, original divert specialty courts in the state of Texas, and we are blessed with both judges and personnel, uh, including Julie Turnbull, who is probably if there's anybody in the state of Texas who knows more about specialty courts and as a whole, she is the chief of the specialty court division in the Dallas District Attorney's Office, and we are just blessed with personnel and both judiciary and attorneys, counselors, case
And
managers.
I'll just jump in really quick just to say that if I remember correctly, Julie just received the All-Star Award at the last conference.
Yes, I
Um,
mean she's a Hall of Famer.
That's what it is, the Hall of Famer Award. See, I even got the name of the award wrong. I just call it the All-Star because she was really there's not a lot of people who've received this award, but she has been singled out and identified as somebody who's deserving to be not recognized just for the work, but that it's so much greater and beyond what we see that she's got to be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, and
So
there's no doubt she deserves it. She is the first person that gets called to go testify at the legislature. She's the first person that gets called on both state and local, state and national levels as far as what makes these specialty courts work properly, and she's a saint.
did you explain exactly what the word divert means for the divert court? Can you share that?
It's a synonym for basically the you're going to make me a liar. I've been around so long, but alternative. It's basically the concept of having a alternative um, uh, case management for felony drug cases. We don't take any violent offenders. It was originally set up for first time felony arrest, and one of the things that was so blessed at the time is and where we have been the beginning of the success was that when the divert court was set up, John Crusoe got SMU to do a full blown study for diversion courts, for specialty courts, for participants in courts, which gave us the initial data, which allowed us to go to the legislature and say, this works. Give us money because this is the only way that you're going to see a substantial change in recidivism among drug addicts. The old just say no or the old put them in jail just wasn't working. And it was when we started the drug business. Just it moves faster than we can keep up with it most of the time. I mean, 15, 20 years ago, fentanyl, nobody even had a clue what fentanyl was. And now we got young people dropping dead on a regular basis. I mean, and so uh, basically the beginning of the programs in the state of Texas were initiated by people like John Crusoe and others who had the foresight to go do the studies necessary that we could walk down to Austin and say, fund it because we'll save you money and headache and heartache if you can make it happen.
No, I agree. You've got some rock stars out there in Dallas because we have an award that's named after Judge Creuzot because of his pioneer ways and the things that he led on so long ago when it comes to the Texas specialty courts. I will jump in real quick and just I'm going to give the audience the what divert stands for because I also never remember it. You just start calling things by their acronyms
I
and you
know
don't
it.
you stop
And
you
I'll go.
stop using the words.
I'll look it up in a second. If you got it,
No, so I had to look it up too to remember it. And I've seen it before. Again, I always forget. Just start calling it the Divert Court, right? It's the Dallas Initiative for Diversion and Expedited Rehabilitation and Treatment Court.
that's
There
what
you
I
go.
was going to say.
Right? I knew you were going to say that. I just got to it before you were about to say it. That is a lot of words for
It's a lot of words.
that's a
It
lot.
diverts so much easier.
It's so
Um,
much easier, and there's no way anybody's going to remember all that and in order, I think. At least that's my theory. So divert is definitely much easier to remember. Can you tell me how long the divert program is for?
well, it's set up for a 12 to 18-month process with which a 2 year uh, ending process. If you basically you've got to get through the program within 2 years or the party's over. But fundamentally, it's set up for 12 to 18 months. If a participant is successful uh, and does not have continued relapse and are any new offenses, uh, most of them can get through in sometime between 12 and 18 months.
That's good. And what kind of services are provided to
Well,
the
Dallas is
participants?
blessed with a their own inpatient treatment facility
Nice.
called the Dallas County. It's called John Creuzot Dallas County Judicial Treatment Center. But so it is set up as a 6 month inpatient treatment program. Uh, we have in-house counselors. We have two. Well, I take that back. We have three in-house counselors, one for our Hispanic community, and then two others who handle everybody who can speak English correctly and properly. We have uh, uh, four case managers. We have our program has on any given day anywhere between on the low ends 100 and the high ends up to 150 participants
Nice.
at any given time. So we are blessed with the finances and the in-house community to both use on a counseling basis. We have an inpatient program, and then there are other programs in the community in Dallas. Homeward Bound, Nexus, which Nexus is a women's facility, uh, which at times they'll allow you to bring children to stay there with you for periods of time. So
Okay.
we are blessed. The only thing the state of Texas is horrendously lacking is bilingual inpatient counseling. We have the SAPI unit in Hidalgo, which services bilingual, inpatient. But the only kicker to that is, for us sending, we have a a whole bunch of people who are not United States citizens in Dallas who are in our program, and we can't send them down because they'll pick them up at the border check in Falfurrias or halfway down to the program. So we are blessed with tons of both inpatient and outpatient counseling for our participants. The only thing we really lack in the Dallas, and I think it's true across the state of Texas, is inpatient programs or inpatient uh, facilities for the Spanish speaking community.
Yeah, that has definitely been an issue that I've heard about from other people as well. Uh, let's go back just a little bit into what when part what kind of participants are coming into this program? Is this a misdemeanor offense or is it a
No, it's at a
felony?
felony offense for the divert court. Now we in Dallas there are, I think it's 13 or 14 specialty courts. Everything from mental health, veterans, DWI, felony DWI, uh, uh, prostitution. We try to cover it all. But for the Dallas County Divert Court, it's a felony set up for primarily first offender, nonviolent offenders, and you can have more than one case, but
Mm.
it's set up for felony offenses alone, for the divert court. There there are adolescent. We have adolescent drug courts, which
Okay.
will handle a different uh, group of individuals. But the divert court is set up primarily for first offender, felony, uh, high risk, high needs. We're not looking for the guy that went on a date and someone handed him some cocaine to try to get lucky with his girlfriend, and that's the only, he got busted. Basically, it is set up for the addict and for the individual who has a uh, designate, I mean, who has an addiction issue, uh, which needs to be addressed.
And that's important. That's an important distinction, right? Because you're saying that this is not for the social person who's just, maybe out with just some friends, or at college and just experimenting with things here and there. This is for people who have a demonstrated history of substance abuse in one way or another. But this might be the first time that they've entered the
Being
criminal
arrested.
justice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this may be the first time that they're arrested for the drugs. Now they may be arrested for a DWI before, or for shoplifting, or for some other minor nonviolent offense. But this is they've been evaluated, and it is designed uh, to treat and to assist and help the high needs, the high individual, the individual who has an addiction issue or has a some form of drug or alcohol or a combination thereof issue.
And do you, your role specifically as the defense attorney, what kind of things are you doing? Like, what's that look like,
Well, it
generally?
on throughout the course of a person's uh, tenure in the program, if when they sign up, I'm involved usually in reviewing their contract with the divert court. So there is a contract which we have with the individual where he agrees to come into the program, to follow the rules, that he is on bond at the time. If he comes from jail, he's given a personal recognizant bond so that he can
Mhm.
participate. So I'm involved in their beginning process, making sure that they understand what they're getting into. And then throughout the course of the 12 to 18 to even 2 year process, very rarely do we have individuals, they're drug addicts.
Mhm.
They make mistakes. We're asking them to change everything in their life. And so things happen. There are relapses. There are they don't know how to manage their lives, and we're going through that whole process. So throughout the course of their stay in the program, there are sanctions. There are things that they've done wrong, not shown up when they're supposed to,
Yeah.
not take care of their business, used either alcohol or drugs, had relapses or use issues. And so I'm involved in making sure that they're properly addressed, that the sanctions that are handed out for these offenses are appropriate for the individual and for the offense, so to speak, that they've committed. So my role is kind of as needed with the, there's some individuals that I never see. I couldn't tell you their name in the program. Then there's others that I get Christmas cards every year from because we just it was a journey for them. So that is primarily my job. Primarily is to protect the individual's rights and to make sure that throughout the course, if they're discharged for any reason, that they have a right to appeal and that is handled properly. So uh, it's uh, it's an as needed on each individual case basis, but everything from making sure that they understand what they're getting into to the end result of hoping and helping them get through any problems they may have in the program.
So, my experiences with the defense attorney as part of the treatment team, it's not really an adversarial role, right? Not like the typical you're going to go to court and you're going to litigate and you're going to fight against the state. It's not that type of role. It's a little bit more collaborative. It's definitely there's still some advocacy involved, and definitely, giving legal advice to the client about their rights and about, just any of their risk or things that they need to be aware of about things. But when you're doing this job, have you ever faced some challenges of, as being a part of a treatment team in this defense role that maybe, advocating for the client, or you just didn't feel like that's the direction as a defense attorney that you felt was appropriate, where the
Oh,
where the treatment team was going, you
yeah,
know?
on a regular basis. One thing that once again I am blessed with a court that understands the process and understands the best practices involved and understands just what you mentioned earlier, that both the district attorney and I are not adversaries throughout this process. We are committed to trying to do under the concepts of best practices that we're involved in, trying to do what's best for the individuals, and on the flip side, for my situation, to make sure that the standards that we've set up and the functions that everybody have, that we apply by it. It's people involved with drug addicts and alcoholics. God bless them, because it's a patient practice. I mean, right when you think someone's doing everything they're supposed to, they'll surprise you and go sideways on you,
Yeah.
so or they'll enabled and they're just they come in all different kinds of shapes and colors.
And that's a part
And
of the
so,
journey, right? That's a part of the
so
journey.
much. And so one thing that we work at is that it isn't a pure adversarial process. I look at individuals who are facing sanctions and say, it's coming, and there ain't nothing I can do about it.
Right.
You can take, you can take the day in jail, or you can take 10 days in jail. I suggest you say thank you, I messed up, and and working with these individuals, um, to make sure. And one thing that one of the blessings with our court, it's a pre-indictment on a large respect court. So I do not if they get removed from the program for whatever reason, I'm not involved in the handling of their case outside the divert program. So that's turned over to a whole different individual, who, of course, I handle hundreds of them over my practice.
But in this
Uh,
case, when it's one of
when
the
they're in the
treatment
program,
ones,
once if they're discharged for either not showing up, or um, uh, multiple times that they've either violated something, either on a personal basis or a use basis. Uh, if they get, I normally handle the appeal and discharge, but if they're gone, they're handed over to somebody else.
a different attorney, yeah, because that attorney then will be adversarial,
He
right? They're
can he
gonna
can he can raise the red flag all he wants.
That's right. And that's the attorney that's going to be looking at the evidence of the case and is actually going to be fighting the merits of the case and doing the plea bargain negotiations and stuff like that. So that's actually a nice characteristic of this court then. It's, as you said, it's pre-adjudication. So they have kind of a second bite at the apple, so to speak.
They exactly, they totally have a second. But
Yeah,
that's one of the things that I tell people when they come into our programs is, I'm not here to decide whether you're guilty or innocent. What you're doing is you're agreeing to go through this program with the understanding that if you complete it, your case is going to be dismissed, and you have the right to have it expunged and removed from the records. Uh, and if you do not successfully complete, then we have a golden rule in Dallas that although your treatment records follow you, the fact that you were discharged from divert cannot be held against you. You don't get a black mark on the on the chalkboard because you didn't successfully complete divert. So
that's
they it's a no lose process. There's really, other than the concept of it is intense. You know,
yeah.
best practices tells us you're taking UAs twice a week randomly. You're meeting with a judge once a week. You're coming, it's not simple probation.
No, it's not. It's pretty intensive and it is really big on accountability and, really really focused on that sobriety, right? And so
Yes.
I think that sometimes people hear this and they think, "Oh, well, they're just getting away with something or they're getting a free deal and they just have to go do this easy stuff." That's not the case at all. It sounds like what you're describing, and from what I know,
Yeah.
is that you're talking about an incentive for people to then actually seek the opportunity to become sober and to go through a long program. It's not I'm going to be sober for 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. It's
No.
I'm going to be sober for over a year and I am going to learn new life skills to help me continue to be sober when I'm not in this program. And that's important, right? Because the court's only going to be involved in people's lives on a temporary basis. And, on the flip side, same thing. People are only going to be involved in the criminal justice system for a certain amount of time, basically. It's not going to be indefinite for these individuals, right? And so we want them to have the skills that they need, and the tools and the ability to ask for help if they need to, and how to do that. But most importantly is identify when they need that help. But to be able to apply these tools out in the real world, in their community, in their homes, in their work, in their everyday life, because that's where things happen that set people back. That's where the stress happens. That's where, the depression might happen. That's where a lot of different things are happening that could trigger some of this, setbacks in people's sobriety journey. And one of the things that I loved what you were talking about is they do get this opportunity to not be a convicted felon. That's a huge incentive, right? Because a lot of people might say, you know what, I'd rather just settle with taking a small amount of time in jail and being done and then going back out and living my life, right? And you and I both know this, having previously been in criminal law in the past. I know, right, that people would rather take that sometimes. That journey to sobriety is hard. It is hard work.
And the reality of it is, you're off the street, drug addict, alcoholic is always looking for the easy way out. And until they hit that wall that they're that they have come to a court, a specialty court, where they say, Junior, this ain't the easiest way out of here. But if you
Yep.
want, the kicker to specialty courts, the blessing of them is the data that tells us the recidivism rate is cut by almost a third in the times that people will come back into the system. And that may
Yeah.
not sound like, you hear all these treatment facilities saying we have a 90%, success rate. They ain't telling you the truth.
No, they're not.
Um,
I was like, I want to see that data because I'm pretty sure
you're
that's not how
right,
the data reads.
because it ain't. And if you can cut them down 30%, if one out of three, you can give them some long-term sobriety and where they do not within the next 5 to 10 years reoffend, you've hit a home run. Both on a social, spiritual, economic, especially basis, and that's what we're trying to do. Well, we're trying to give these people the tools to have long-term sobriety, and it doesn't come with checking into probation once a month.
Right.
It doesn't come with taking a UA every 3 or 4 times you come in. It comes in with showing these people what the lifestyle of being sober for an extended period of time. And you're gonna have people. I've been going to AA meetings for 35 years now, and there will be people come in who you see at meetings every day after 4 or 5 years have had relapses.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in the criminal system, but uh, drug addiction. There's not an exact science in alcoholism and drug addiction recovery. We know that the a lot of this stuff that we try to get people to do does work, but it's not an exact science. And as some people just are incapable of getting and staying sober.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, that's true. And then there's what you describe. I mean, there's the people who just are not able to stay sober. And then maybe the most important thing is to keep the community safe though, right? It's about, well, okay, maybe you can't be sober, but can we keep you from getting behind the wheel of a
well,
car? Can we keep
and
you
I've always
from,
said one of the big things we do in recovery and divert court, we'll screw up someone's drinking and drugging, where before they may think that it's okay and they're having a good old time. Once
yep,
they go through a program, they may not graduate, but they're not we have instilled upon them the issues that it ain't the right way to do life. And they may, I've had people who have been discharged from programs that 3 and 4 and 5 years later came back and said, I finally got it after after all the pain and that I went through. But I'd have been dead if I hadn't seen you guys to begin with.
That's called planting seeds, right? Like sometimes it's not ready to grow yet,
No.
Not it's not ready to grow in that individual and you can't force it, right? It really does have to be ready. It has to be a fertile ground to be ready to grow inside of that individual. And sometimes I think some people don't think it's that they're going to be sober. They don't think that they're ready. And then they come into these programs and that time there, they are ready and they're surprised
Yes.
by how ready they are, right? And
Well, if most of a lot of people we have, have not had a sober week in their life from about age 13 till into their 20s.
yeah,
And you give them 30, 60, 90, 120 days of sobriety where all of a sudden things start to cheer up. Their spouse or their parents are talking to them again.
right.
You
The
know,
relationships are healthier.
oh, their job, they suddenly their boss is looking at them and says, you've showed up every day for the last month. What's wrong with
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
So once that you can just get a taste of it in there and to them. Then you got something to work on and live on. And it's they come in for different reasons and stay sober for different reasons.
that's right.
Um, but it like I say, we have come light years away from just say no or locking them up and to where we are with the concept of best practices and recovery.
Yeah, no, I'm grateful that we have these practices because I those are evidence-based. There's so much research that goes into that, and I'm sure the research is always ongoing, right? And
Oh,
people, right? And the people that these services are for are changing. The audience and the participants, everybody's changing, society changes, and we grow and modify. And as that happens, so should our services, right?
oh,
And
for
that's one of
certain.
it's one of the great things about the best practices is that they are being evaluated and looked at and being changed as the needs of the community changes. Hey there, we're going to take a quick break while I remind you about the Texas Association of Specialty Courts annual training conference scheduled for March 24th through 26th at the Omni Corpus Christi. Our conference regularly attracts criminal justice professionals associated with the specialty court field from all over the state of Texas that are interested in serious issues facing our society in the fields of mental health, social work, counseling, community corrections, juvenile justice, law enforcement, substance abuse, and other related fields. The conference serves as an avenue for training, gathering resources, and networking to create a forum for dialogue on current issues relating to specialty court programs. We have guest speakers confirmed, including Judge Aurora Martinez Jones of Travis County, Amber Middleton of Travis County, Judge Elizabeth Rainey of Midland County, Kevin Edwards of Denton County, Amber Gregory from the Specialty Court Resource Center, Aaron Morgan from the Office of Court Administration, Paul Kopp from North Texas, Dr. Blake Harris from the Texas Veterans Commission, Dr. Ken Robinson, and Wendy Standifer of Correction Counseling Incorporated. And one of our top favorites, Vanessa Matthews, is returning from All Rise to speak at our conference. TASC invites you to join us. Registration is open and a link is in the show notes. CLE credit will be provided for Texas lawyers. If you're looking for an opportunity to display or sell your products and/or services to conference attendees, TASC is still accepting sponsor or exhibitor applications. You can find the application on the conference page of our website at tasctx.org. Again, that's tasctx.org. Now let's get back to our guest speaker to learn more. You were talking earlier about just some of the things that participants do in the program and the different things. And it made me think about this author that I love. His name's James Cleary. He wrote this book called Atomic Habits. Have you
No,
ever
I
heard of?
haven't read it, but I guess I need to.
Yes. So it's a really good book on, the habits that we have affect who we are like later. Like let's just say
Mhm.
whatever it is we're doing now are kind of based off of habits we created like 6 months before, right? And so changing your habits essentially kind of changes who you are as a person, but it also changes the things that you do and then what you accomplish around you. And I think a lot of times these programs with these evidence-based practices, what they're trying to do, especially the length of time that people are in these programs, is you're changing people's habits.
Oh,
So
for
like that comment about like it's hard for them to schedule their lives to even just plan to show up places on time sometimes, right? And those are just habits that as you start being held accountable to making some changes and you start doing these changes and they just become part of who you are and they just become part of your habits and you don't really think about them anymore. They stop being difficult to accomplish and then they just become part of your daily life, right? And then it's like it was always like that, even though we know it wasn't. So it's just something simple. It's just I love the concept about this, about atomic habits. You're gonna have to look into it. I have the book. I have not read the entire book. I listened to him talk about it on lots of podcasts because, as you could tell, I love podcasting. But it is such a interesting concept that I think people don't realize. And it just talks about those incremental steps to get to where you want to go rather than having these huge, you come in day one and it's like the goal is to be sober, but nobody realistically can expect somebody who's an addict is going to have sobriety for the rest of their life after day one in the program, right? Like
no.
that's not how that works. So when people sometimes will, fall off the wagon, so to speak, is one of the terms, or just relapse. And the issue isn't that it happened, it's not great, but that's not really the issue. The issue is, does that person have the tools and the desire to get their wagon
To
back on track?
change, to
Yeah.
change. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what we're talking about. The old adage of what do I got to change to be sober? Everything,
Yes.
and that's really what, when we talk about, the tough thing, there's no doubt about it, people, places, and things where, we're asking these young people, I say young, they're run from 18 to, we've had 60-year-olds, but to change everything in their life. And it's interesting for watching them go through the process where, uh, to begin with, they don't see the necessity to, they're my buddies. I grew up with them. They care about me. Well,
Yep.
and then all the way to the concept of families and work and just everything. The accountability process that so many drug addicts and alcohol, I just love it when I'm sitting in court and some kid who hadn't shown up said no one called me and told me about it.
Yes.
Well, did you ever think about, you knew something was out there, picking up the phone and just calling saying, where am I supposed to be?
Yep.
But these are the things that we kid about in the recovery belief is, when you have your first drink or drug, that's where you stop growing up.
Yeah.
So most of these people are 12 and 13-year-old mindsets
Right.
that you've got to walk through them to help them grow up,
Yeah.
to mature, to live a life of sobriety and an adult mature life, which, you know, if I started when I was 13 and I didn't get sober till I was 35, there's 20 years of stupidity
Right.
that I went through in there that 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 I didn't mature. I used drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism for life. And
Yeah.
the reality of it is we know it doesn't work.
Right. But we know it doesn't work when we're on the outside looking in and saying, hey, objectively, that's not working for you. Why would you do that? On the inside, when
Yeah.
you're the person who's relying on that and you're, frankly, your brain isn't sober,
No.
long enough to
It's all I
really,
got.
yeah, this is what I've got. This is what's helping me. This is what I'm relying on. Or even if you kind of know it's not working, the problem is it's a habit. This is what my go-to is when I'm feeling this
Yes.
way. This is what makes sense. It's almost comforting, to do
Oh,
what
for certain.
seems natural.
It's
Yeah,
it's what makes me feel whole.
right,
And
exactly.
when we talk about, that's another thing, is that people don't maybe understand the reality of addiction. It's a feelings disease. It's
Yeah,
I don't do drugs because I'm big on sticking something up my nose. I do drugs because it changes how I feel about myself.
yep,
And so, during that process of recovery with these people, we've got to spend enough time with them in a non-threatening environment to let them know that it's okay to grow up,
yeah.
to feel pain, to hurt, to change stuff. And so it it's a process. And what we know today, it's an interesting, the old AA concept began in about 1920, right around that time. And
Wow.
so it's over 100 years old now. And it's amazing what they've come up with. Two guys sitting in a room with a bunch of drunks, learning how to stay clean and sober one day at a time. And
Yeah.
so and
Well,
that's what we're trying to do with these people. You know, if I was miserable, I've been sober for over 35 years, and if I was not happy with my life, I'd drink.
right. Exactly. And
I
and
drink.
like
So
I yeah, and like I said earlier, like life happens. I mean, I've known
yes,
people who, are sober. They go that journey, they become sober, they're doing great for years. And they'll have death after death after death. And you just think, how can this person experience so much
yes.
death in such a short amount of time, and what do you know? They have a challenge on their journey, they relapse. And it is it is so hard to go through life sometimes, especially when bad things happen. And it can be really tough. And I think for anybody who doesn't have an addiction issue, right? Like if they don't have that challenge in their lives, but when you do, and you know that this thing exists that makes you feel better and comforted, it's not really that big of a surprise that somebody would turn to that in their dark moments. That just, it
Oh,
really is about changing your life so that it is so fulfilling that you want it, that you want
well,
to stay sober because it's desirable to live that life.
and that's what's so big about the whole concept. The spirituality involved in true recovery is something that us boys in the hood, we're supposed to take care of everything, and we're supposed to be our
Yeah.
boss, and we're supposed to know all the answers, and we're supposed to be the man. And the women have the same kind of concept. We all have roles and duties, and
Yep.
most of us are so ill prepared to handle any of that stuff that the feeling of less than there ain't nothing like a joint or a martini that'll make you feel better about life. And the problem that most of us have who are in these addiction issues, my alcoholism wasn't that I had a gin bottle in my pocket every day.
Yeah,
Mine was that when I was thought I had the need to have a drink, I couldn't tell you whether it was going to be one or 20.
yeah,
And going down that path, of course, when it was one, I was fine. I came home, said, "Hi, wife, how are you? My day was beautiful. Let's have dinner." When I had the 20, there's no telling where I was, and
yeah.
the pain that we cause in our families and friends and both financial, every in all aspects of our lives, it is truly happens. So
Well, they
uh,
say that addiction causes, it leads to isolation, right? People feel
yes,
disconnected from the people around you. And a lot of times that's because of the impact it's had on those relationships and the people around you, your jobs, your boss, your employers, your coworkers, your spouse, your family, your kids, your parents, your cousins, like whatever it is, like
oh,
a
it's
lot of
deep.
it's deep, yeah, and a lot of times it's gone on so long that these things have happened over time. It's not always all of a sudden, right? So it's not as obvious all the time why somebody's life is the way it is, but it's not so happy all the time. But when that person becomes sober, it is often that I hear this story is that they do get connected with people a little bit more, somebody that they weren't connected with, the relationship might be a little bit better. Or what I've heard is that they also identify then what relationships might be toxic, what relationships
Yes.
might be enabling or contributing to a life that leads to that addiction, right? So it's a little bit easier to, I say easier, I'm gonna come back to this, but it's a little bit easier to say, okay, now I can identify that. I know that relationship isn't good for me. I'm gonna choose not to engage in that relationship anymore. But I do want to talk about relationships because I think relationships are a huge part of somebody's journey to sobriety. And I think they're a huge part of these treatment court programs. And I want to talk to you about what you've seen as far as participants when they're coming in. Do you find that there's a lot of self-discovery about their own personal relationships, but also do you find that the relationships with the treatment team and the people who are going through and the other participants who are going through this journey with them, such as like even going in AA, do you find that that is a huge part of people's success in this
Oh, I
program?
don't think there's any doubt. And it's like we talked about. I said just earlier, if I wasn't happy as a sober individual, I'd drink and drug. And the same thing goes with my family and my relationships. If the friends around me weren't, if I didn't associate myself with the friends and family and people who respect my sobriety and understand my growth and my both my spiritual and just well-being that has happened in my life, uh, I wouldn't be here. And I think that's so true. When we have graduation, that's one of the great things about graduation is the family participation in it. These people who a lot of these families had said, "Don't show up at my house ever again," are there welcoming their participants back into the fold. And
Yeah,
the wives are saying, "Yes, you can see your child again," and the mom saying, "Yes, you can come. You can come to my house. I know you're not going to steal everything in the house to go buy drugs and alcohol when you come home now." So it's our relationships. Like I say, we're not asking our participants to be isolatory. We don't want you sitting in a corner. We don't want you in the confession booth at church, and that's the only place you go. We want you out. participating with others in a sober way. It's funny. Uh, of my friends in college that, of course, we acted like idiots all the way through. Uh, I still associate with the majority of them. About three or four of us are in recovery, but the rest of them, they drink normal. And my wife is, she'll have a glass of wine and leave it half empty. I don't understand that. But, I still associate with people who who drink. Now, I don't. Nobody's using drugs like we used to, but people are still drinking. The normies are out there, and we're not asking you not to have associations with people who do drink in a healthy manner or have a glass of wine at dinner sometime.
Yeah,
But you understand, we come to understand there's healthy relationships and unhealthy relationships, and we cannot afford to to be in the unhealthy relationships. Uh,
exactly. Yeah.
we just are we
In
got too
some
much.
ways, well, in some ways, you're saying it's almost like you're saying it's okay. We're going to empower you to actually care about your health as a priority over being in this relationship that seemed fulfilling in some way, probably, and why you have this relationship, or it's a family relationship, whatever it is, but it existed for a reason. You've continued it for a reason, but your health is so much more important than keeping that relationship, right? And then
No doubt.
you do find in when you have this journey to sobriety, you do find that there are people that can be a part of your life and be fulfilling that are also sober, or that can drink and do that in a healthy, respectful way that isn't as enticing to you, that isn't going to, you know, encourage you or
Offend
label
or
you, yeah, or
or
offend
threaten your
you.
sobriety.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
like
feel
that term.
threatened by
Yeah,
the people. They're not. They don't give me any trouble about being so, not drinking.
right. And
There's nobody says anything. You sure you don't? I don't get questioned about my sobriety. When the check comes, they always trying to make sure I don't pay for the $200 bottle. That's a great thing about life today. When I was drinking, we were drinking $5 bottles of wine. Now my wife and all my friends are drinking $100 bottles of wine, and I'm having to fit half the bill. So it ain't
exactly.
right. I'm telling you, it ain't right, but it's well worth the cost.
Yes. No, that is true though. I like how you use the term it doesn't threaten your sobriety because again, that means you're protective of your sobriety, right? You value it, so you protect it.
Oh, for
And
certain.
I think teaching people to value that and value themselves in that way is so important. Um, I want to ask you a little bit more about your time as a criminal defense attorney because you've had a lot of clients, I'm sure. And I'd like you to share a little bit about any distinction you see from the clients that you have that are not in the program who have addiction challenges to compared to the clients that you have in the program and their journey. Not necessarily everybody who's successful per se, but just generally between these two groups of people, what are some of the things you're seeing that are different? And basically what I'm asking is this program, is it often a better
Well,
use just to
I
go through this
see my,
program?
my my clients that are not in recovery and program, they seem to come back, and their return visits are much more common than those who are in the program and staying sober. I mean, my sobriety clients, sober clients, I may get a speeding ticket every now and then, but if they're saying the drug bust, they're not paying for my daughter's education anymore. But
Yeah,
then those who are using they're gonna come back and see you one way or the other. The
yeah,
recidivism, if they're still using, they're still, they're still making bad mistakes, whether it's getting behind the wheel, driving, or
Yeah.
it's some kind of family violence situation. It was interesting that during COVID, where everybody was locked into their homes as a big process, the family violence that was taking place with my non-recovery friends was in folds. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
people. So there is no doubt that those who my clients who have long-term sobriety afterwards, they don't seem as much. Uh,
Yeah.
and they're divorce. They don't, they're not asking for divorce attorneys. They're not, they're making progress. But the ones that, it, it's a given. If you're out there continuing to use drugs and alcohol, you're going to get the same. You do the same things, you're going to get the same things you've been doing, and
Yep.
that's just it's reality. Um, where it's interesting. We're seeing. I know, like it was on the ballot this year. There was the legalization of marijuana. It's going to happen, and
Yeah.
um, I'm not saying that the guy that smokes a joint on a Friday afternoon is any worse than the guy that has a martini on a Friday afternoon. But what we know is that there's so much more to it in the environment that they're in, and it's just going to be interesting to see over the course of the next 5 to 10 years how the legalization of marijuana and hemp and CBC, how all that flows out.
I agree. I think so too. I think there hasn't been nearly enough studies because it's not legalized, right? So there hasn't been nearly enough studies. I think without these studies, there's definitely I think some misperceptions about things, good or bad, right? Like
Yes.
I've heard both different things that I'm like, I don't think there's anything to really verify that. But, I think in this field, I have to say, having been a previous criminal defense attorney, you do see a lot in your clients, though, right? Like you do see common denominators and you do see some common behaviors. And it is concerning, not to say, and I agree, it's like whether you have a joint on Friday or you have a glass martini, it's the same thing. It's just one more substance that definitely can be used by people who have some challenges with limits, right? And appropriate use, unfortunately.
Well,
So
I the when I was using and I can't remember smoking a joint and wanting to go do anything very productive. I mean,
right.
and on the flip side,
Yeah.
I hate to say that the hours and time I spent trying to make sure that there was going to be a beer or an alcohol somewhere, but it's all it's a mind altering drug, and there's whether it's alcohol,
Yeah.
marijuana, cocaine, fentanyl, methamphetamine. It's all used. It's an escape process, and that's my dear wife who has that glass of wine. She uses it to escape, though her level of escape is put her feet up and say, "Boy, I had a tough day." Where mine
Yeah.
was a little further down the road.
Right.
But we know that there's no doubt that drugs and alcohol, the sole purpose of it is to change how we feel.
Yeah. Yep.
And the problem that those of us who have addictive personalities and have issues involved abuse it. And it's that we're not talking about the guy who lights up a joint on Friday afternoon just to take escape have a small escape day. or the glass of wine at the end of the day. Um, so
Yeah.
uh,
Which kind of
it's been an interesting journey.
it goes, so I mean that goes into my next question. I actually would love to hear if there is somebody's journey that you could share, any success story um, that basically that's impacted you, that has changed the way you think about anything at
You know,
all.
I've got a friend that owns a big, very fancy retail store here in Dallas, and he is one of the individuals that it takes what it takes, and we, you know, we can't give up on people. We can't. He didn't get sober till he went to prison, and
Yeah,
he, you know, he played all the games all up until, but his sobriety and his moment of truth didn't come till he was locked up in prison in a jumpsuit, nowhere to go, no way out, and for some reason his day of the return came in prison, and he's extremely successful, had stores on both coasts, and then was involved in a car accident and is paralyzed from the waist down, and
wow.
still maintains his sobriety, still works with individuals. You know, it's a God deal. This, you know, for people who, I look at my journey, and you know, the worst thing that happened to me was ended up my first wife. I ended up getting a divorce. Thank God we didn't have children at the time. And you know, both my parents have died of natural causes. I mean, both of them have illnesses that died while I've been sober. But my life is just it hasn't been that tragic to speak of. And yet I look at this guy, and he had every reason to go get high and just say that to hell with this all. But you know, he got sober in prison, helps, you know, other alcoholics and drug addicts at this time, and is now functioning from a wheelchair, and just an amazing story that just, you know, you think he got bad. You
Yeah,
know, it's here's a guy that was doing everything right, and it would have been so easy for him to say, this ain't right, God. I'm going to go a different path. And yet it strengthened his commitment to the recovery. It strengthened his commitment to work with other alcoholics and to be sober and to stay sober.
he sounds like a really inspiring individual. I
Oh,
hope he
he's just a star.
Yeah, I hope he shares his story with people. I hope I'm sure so many people are inspired if they hear it. That's an amazing thing to hear. It's a sad thing to hear, but it is, it's an amazing
For
thing.
certain, certain
Yeah,
it and it, you know, it didn't happen when he was using. It happened when he'd had 20 years of sobriety,
yeah,
and yet he didn't turn. So he's an amazing soul.
yeah. And we talked about that earlier. Yeah, like life happens and life is hard and
Oh,
tragic, bad things happen to people all the time. And that's really hard. And
yes.
it's really hard to not have a relapse then if that is a challenge for you. And I know a lot of people don't relapse all the time, but there are people who do. And so it's good when they can put themselves back to right and they don't stay, they don't wallow in that. They don't say, you know what, just
Exactly.
just forget all that work I did. I'd rather go back to this. Instead, it's
Well,
okay, I'm gonna get it back together. I know what life is like sober, and that's the life I want. So,
and
pushing
hopefully
that.
most of these people have the ability to get back before it either kills them or something
Yeah.
tragic happens in life. You know, we have a wall at our in our court of pictures of people who have either graduated or been in the program who have died. This disease kills people on a regular basis, and there's no doubt about it.
I'm glad you brought that up, Hank. That is one of the things that I have to tell you. I always tell people this when they ask or they make comments about the danger to the community. I always tell people nobody goes into addiction thinking, oh, I want to be an addict, or
Hmm.
oh, I want to get behind a car and hurt somebody. Most times it's not even I want to get behind the car and hurt myself, right? Like I'm not trying to hurt, people are not trying to hurt anybody generally. That
No,
is not an intentional thing that you see with these participants or people who are, facing addiction issues. It is not what I've heard from people at all. I mean, some of them are, you're talking about some kind people actually
no, yeah,
who,
nobody's very few, very few what I would designate as evil people.
yeah,
Mo,
I have, yeah,
some of
that's,
the neatest, kindest, gentlest people I've ever
yeah,
known in my life are addicts.
yeah. And it's just, it's, so when something tragic does happen, one of the hardest things is for somebody to have to live with that if they were the cause of that, right?
For
And
certain.
to overcome that. And that is another journey that unfortunately some people have had to deal with and live with. And that is that's not good for anybody. And so I think these treatment court programs are so important. They keep the community safer than they would be without them. They also, keep individuals safer
For
who,
certain.
like that individual that you talked about earlier that came back and said, I don't think I would be alive had I not even done a small portion of that program, years before.
Yes.
And so they're making a difference, is my point. And I'm so grateful, like I said, that they exist. I think that they impact people's lives in such a positive way. I appreciate the work that you're doing on the treatment team and advocating for individuals and providing them the legal advice that they need to make choices because at the end of the day, they do have choices throughout the program. They need somebody advising them so that they can make an informed choice. What I want to talk about before we get towards the end here, can you share a little bit about what surprised you about being in part of the treatment court programs? What was interesting or something that you think somebody who hasn't been a part of the treatment team as a defense attorney might want to know about based off of your experience?
I think there's some things which the whole concept of the best practices, if I was going to make rules, they wouldn't be what they are. I mean, simple things that are amazing to me is it's like the role that the judge plays in these programs is huge. And I would not have thought that they could give a what about what the judge has to say to them on any given basis, but that's huge. Just these little things that make such a big difference in the outcome of an individual, set up by the research and the best practices, which if I'm making it up, you go to work, you come home, you don't drink, you go to an AA meeting and everything will be fine. There's a lot more to it than that.
There definitely is. And hopefully, people are listening to this show and they're learning that there's a whole lot more to it than just that. There's just a whole lot more to being a part of these programs, and a whole lot more that for these participants to do that is not always feasible for every one of them to do in their life circumstances either. You
No,
know,
and I think the thing that I hopefully the more we get involved, the more the politicians, the judges, the people in the communities understand that it these programs and these processes aren't free, but and that we need their help, we need their support, we need their money, we need their bodies to assist. Dallas is a big community, and there's a whole lot of fun, but there are rural communities all over the state of Texas that I tell you, I promise you, if you set me, my good drug addict and drinking days, if you set me loose in a in a county in West Texas, in 10 minutes I'm gonna find drugs and alcohol. They're everywhere, and the problems are
Yeah.
everywhere. And we've got to have the community support uh, to the rural communities as well as the urban, you know, cities and counties that we face. Anything people in their communities can do to assist, both on a manpower basis and on an economic and fund basis, it's important
Okay.
because and the return is tremendous.
Thank you for saying that, Hank. I think that's absolutely correct. I hope that people, as they learn more and more about specialty courts, that they become more involved and become interested and curious and ask questions and learn because I think you're right. The drugs and alcohol are everywhere, including in our kids' schools. They are
For certain.
everywhere, and, addiction is starting very early for people. And sometimes I think it's easier to be like, well, I'm willing to help when they're children, or I'm willing to try to intervene then, but it's a little bit different when it's an adult, that sympathy isn't always there, that empathy that we would like everybody to have isn't always the same level when the participant is now an adult versus a child. But I would just caution people to realize a lot of these addictions started very young when they were
Oh, for
children,
certain.
right?
For
And
certain.
a lot of the triggers and a lot of the trauma and a lot of the things that are going on in people's lives started as a child. And what's happened is they haven't had, in most cases, they have not had the opportunity to learn the skills that they need to learn to live a
Yes.
life of sobriety. And so this program gives them that opportunity. And all of these Texas Specialty Court programs, that's what they're doing. They're giving them the opportunity to get skills that they need, those tools that they need to live a life of sobriety. And they probably, very likely, have not had those skills before.
and
Yeah,
and the education of the communities as we go forth, like I say, specialty courts are looking. I mean, Dallas, it's 25 years, which is just been a miracle, but it's just what we know today is it works.
yeah,
And we need to let it work and use it to work, because the benefits are tenfold. They're just so beneficial to the individuals, the communities, the families, the justice system. It's the benefits that they perceive are great. So we just
I
need to keep
agree.
pushing and pushing and pushing to make sure we have the funds and the personnel to do what we need to do.
I agree. I agree. And before we start wrapping up, I want to talk a little bit more about those awards we were talking about earlier because, like I said, Dallas is just immersed with some superstars, including yourself. So I want to go back to the Judge John C. Cruzo Award. It's for judicial vision and leadership. And that, like I said, is an award with the Texas Association of Specialty Courts. Uh, we have like a little spill, so to speak, about what this award is, and I'm just going to read it off. So let's talk about that real quick. I'm going to read it off.
Okay.
Judge Cruzo is a pioneer of drug courts in Texas, playing a significant role in changing the courts of criminal justice in Texas. Judge Cruzo recognized the need to steer the Texas criminal justice system in a different direction by giving repeat drug offenders an opportunity to change in the face of great opposition. Ignoring criticism and a new nickname, Let 'em Go Cruzo, Judge Cruzo demonstrated courage, vision, and conviction to the belief that drug courts were an evidence-based practice worthy of establishing in Texas. Established in 2010, the Cruzo Award honors a judge who demonstrates visionary leadership and courage used to further the ideal and concept of problem-solving courts. So since 2010, we have had quite a few award recipients and many judges who have demonstrated that judicial vision and leadership. I just have to say thank you to Judge Creuzot, and I'm a little jealous that you get to work with him. I'm not gonna lie. But we really appreciate the work he's done and the work he continues to do through the people that he works with still in Dallas. And then for the Hall of Fame award that we talked about earlier, this Hall of Fame award was created actually in 2021. It's a fairly new award.
Yeah.
It was prompted in large part by Judge Ruben Reyes's passing and his invaluable contributions to the field of specialty courts. The TASC Specialty Court Ally and Advocacy Award is named after Judge Paul White. Both of these awards are merit-based and not awarded annually. So that's two different awards. Each year, the people are considered for these awards. Julie, I believe, might have been only the second person added to the Hall of Fame that I know of. The first person was Judge Ruben Reyes. If there's been somebody else, I've probably missed it, but I just want to point out that's how special Julie Turnbull is, and I again am grateful for all of her contributions that she has provided to Texas Association of Specialty Courts, but also the people that she serves across the state with the work that she does.
She's a star, and she's got pictures of me I don't want out in public, but she Ruben was an individual who was just had some peace and spirit about him that just was hard to miss. And Julie was the same kind. Julie has just, like I say, there's nobody in the state of Texas. Mary Covington may be a close second, who has been involved in the programs and the association, and in Dallas specifically for Julie, just all the courts that she has her hand in.
I think that's awesome. Hank, it has been a pleasure talking with you
Well,
today.
thank you.
It's always a pleasure talking to you, but seriously, I appreciate you joining us and sharing about your own journey, but also about the work that you're doing and the people's lives that you are impacting. This work is not for the faint of heart, and I'm not surprised at all about how brave and how amazing I know that you are at this point, and I'm just continuing to learn more and more about you. So,
well, it's saved my life, so I get more from it than I give, I promise you.
So we're gonna wrap up. Is there anything that you'd like to share before we go?
No, you've done a job. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks for listening to our show. As a reminder, see our show notes to contact us and find links to information discussed today. You can also find a link to learn more about our annual training conference that will be held on March 24th through 26th of 2025. I'll be dropping another episode soon, so stay tuned and be sure to like and subscribe to our show so you'll be notified when new episodes are available.